This image might be difficult for some of you to look at, but it's important we understand and recognize that the disease is causing changes to happen in the person's brain, which causes their symptoms. Oftentimes, a person with dementia looks quite healthy, maybe even, quote, normal on the outside, which can make it difficult for those around them to make sense of their symptoms. While there are several different diseases that cause dementia, they share many symptoms. Eventually, most dementias lead to pronounced shrinking of the brain or atrophy. This image demonstrates what the brain of someone with advanced Alzheimer's disease would look like. When you look at the brain on the right, you can see there are profound changes, big gaps and holes. If you think of our brain as a telecommunication network, you can really see that there are likely to be downed power lines all over this brain. You can think of the brain as made up of 4 regions or lobes on each side of our brains. The frontal lobes are just behind the forehead. The parietal lobes sit at the top and center above the occipital and temporal lobes. The occipital lobes sit at the back of the head, and the temporal lobes sit just behind the ears on each side of our head. The regions of the brain responsible for speech and language are primarily on the left side of the brain, in the left temporal lobe and left frontal lobe. When damage occurs in these regions of the brain as a result of plaques and tangles, vascular damage, or other protein changes, the person has difficulty with communication. The image on this slide demonstrates the key areas of the brain responsible for speech and language. It's not necessary for you to know or remember the medical terms I'm going to share. This section is to help you understand the physiological changes that are causing the symptoms. And also, you may hear these terms used by medical professionals, so you can refer back to this information at a later date if you need clarification. First, information from sound goes through the ears to the primary auditory area, located on both sides of the brain in the temporal lobes, slightly above each ear. The information then flows to Wernicke's area, which is the language comprehension center of the brain, located on the left side of the brain. When this region is damaged, the person has difficulty with language processing, including recognizing individual words and naming objects. Words become difficult to understand, or they lose their meaning. For example, the person may hear the word fork, but not understand what a fork is. This is known as receptive aphasia. You can think of it as problems with language coming in. After the information goes to Wernicke's area for comprehension, it then flows toward the front of the brain to Broca's area, which is responsible for speech production. People who have damage to this area of the brain have expressive aphasia, or difficulty with speech production and language articulation. They may have trouble formulating a response, generating speech, or using full sentences. Someone with expressive aphasia may primarily speak using nouns or verbs or adjectives. For example, they might say, walk dog, instead of, I will take the dog for a walk. In addition, the motor cortex sends messages to our mouth and hands as we speak. So damage in this area results in difficulty articulating words or using gestures. Vocabulary, comprehension of speech, and speech production are all things that are handled in the temporal and frontal lobes. Anomia is a symptom whereby people with dementia experience difficulty in finding the right word and mix up the names of objects or people. Often, someone with anomia speaks in generalities or uses a word that shares something in common with the word or name they're trying to say, such as another form of cutlery, another type of fruit, another name that sounds familiar. Put it another way, they may call a spoon a fork, an orange an apple, or call Fred Frank. Other ways that dementia impacts communication include alexia, when the brain cannot process letters, words, or sentences, which makes it difficult to read. Agraphia, when writing becomes difficult. And this is particularly challenging for people who have compensated for an increasingly damaged memory center by writing themselves notes to read to help them with their daily task. And now writing is now impaired. Think of people needing to write checks or read health agreements. People with dementia may also say things that others feel are inappropriate or offensive. They may also repeat words or phrases over and over again. These symptoms may be due to the loss of filter in the frontal lobe, the part of the brain that reminds us of what is and isn't socially appropriate. People with damage to the frontal lobe may swear, joke inappropriately, or seem flat in their communication. They may also have difficulty understanding humor if it's very abstract. Let's look at a practical example. What do you think this woman might be having difficulty with? When you see this picture, what do you think she is wondering? She could be wondering, what is this thing? Or she may just be trying to work out whether this is a dog or a cat. Or she might be trying to recall the name. Is this Fluffy or Buddy? Does this information help you make sense of some of the communication changes you've been noticing with your family member or friend, or have been experiencing yourself?